So I've been working with you for a little over 4 years now, and by working with someone who works in relationships and kind of looking and browsing at all sorts of relationship advice from therapists to people in the spiritual community, just trying to hear what everyone is saying. And my thoughts are, with what you talk about with your relationship technology, as you call it, is that it's one of the most simple ways. You have very simple practices that help people get to like a relationship that is that has the potential to go much further than the standard relationship goes. If that does that make
I
sense
think
to you?
that's very, yeah, sure.
Okay. So I want to start off with like to talk about like run through a typical relationship scenario, kind of like you. So for instance, you were married, you got married when you were in your 20s, I believe, right?
At 20.
When you got into that relationship, what was your criteria? I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah, we have talked about this before, and it sounds so silly now, but it was true that I was looking for someone I found attractive who was willing to be seen with me in public. And not that I consciously had those thoughts, because I didn't have much consciousness at all, to be honest with you. I wasn't really thinking. And it wasn't that I was stupid or lacking in a reasonable amount of intelligence. It's just that I had never been prepared for thinking about relationships. And so when I met a woman who seemed to like me and was willing to hang out with me, and I fell in love, I thought, well, what's to stop us? We should get married. We should be together, which in hindsight, of course, is a dismally unproductive way of thinking.
So then how long did you date before you got married?
Oh, long time, like 3 months.
You got married after 3 months?
Yeah, we met in the spring semester, started dating in the summer, and I proposed, and we got married by the end of summer.
So that to me is like a story that, like I'm reading like Carl Jung right now. It's almost like an archetype, almost like it's so common, like in the consciousness of people. Like to me, like you said, the one thing is like, we don't teach anyone how to do this stuff, like how to have successful relationships. So you're going in with what you said, which was I had, oh, she's hot, is what I would say back in like when I was a kid. And again, like she'll be seen with me in public. So then that's the criteria. You get in. And then to me, I had like, well, love will just work itself out.
It never even occurred to me that I might be with someone who didn't really love me. But I think in hindsight, that was true. So it was just an unthinkable thing. Why would she spend time with me? Why would she be laughing at my jokes? Why would she say yes to a marriage proposal if she were not in love with me? And my follow-up irrational belief is, or was, not is, was, if she loves me, then everything's going to work out. I love her. She loves me. We're madly, deeply with each other. And this is automatically somehow going to all work out, which is kind of what the culture was saying to us. And I think
what it's saying to us too, because like you grew up in what, the 70s? Was it the 70s?
I was getting married in the 70s. So it was, and I was born in the 50s. So age 20.
Yeah. And I was entering my first relationship in like long term in like 2000. So it's like that 50-year gap. There has been no, I mean, and we talked about this before. It's like, that's like a national tragedy, or it's like a disaster. I mean, the way I see it, it's
not much has changed.
It's a failure of our country, or probably to like teach these skills so you don't do that. So it's like this failure is inevitable. And I've seen it in my own life and then my friend's life. And I mean, we'll get more into that, but
immediately the listener to this podcast is going to be thinking of exceptions. Well, my grandparents, they got married after knowing each other for a week, and they were married for 70 years. Yeah, but look what's going on there. We're citing the exceptions, the outliers, and nobody would say, well, we would all be best served by meeting someone and deciding within the week to get married or not.
Yeah.
Nobody would make that argument. Those outliers serve only, I think, to buttress the denial that there could be a body of knowledge or a way of thinking that would really dramatically escalate the odds of success for any of us.
Well, I've also heard you say that longevity doesn't equal happiness. And I just listened to a podcast really quick, and they said that same thing. It's like, oh yeah, that the woman who was speaking, she's like, people are like, we've been together 50 years or 60 years, and they celebrated like this whole thing. It's like, yeah, but were you happy during that time? Was your relationship at its maximum potential? And that's where I think I would be very shocked. The like percentage of people who actually do get that relationship where they get together, they live that long without having kind of like the tools that you provide, I think, and other people provide them in their own different ways. But I feel like if you don't have any sort of idea, you're not going to get to that maximum potential.
Well, I don't want to get bogged down, if you want to go in a different direction, but if we're talking about longevity, there was a study done of long married couples in, I believe it was New York, and they went around asking, what was the secret of your long happiness?
Mm-hmm.
And what the researchers found over and over again was, yeah, they weren't happy.
Mm.
And they terminated the study early because it was so depressing and it was so miserable.
Mm.
And really, I think we would all be well served not just to look at psychology, but to look at history. If you think about it historically, many older couples, like my grandparents, and even my parents' generation, people stayed married because of an absence of alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to stay married meant at least you had a roof over your head, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or at least you had enough food to eat.
Yeah.
And those were basic considerations. The great thing I think about the 20th century's advances, where women could take jobs out of the home and become self-sufficient, even in spite of the sexist restrictions on their success. As time has gone by, women have more and more become truly self-reliant agents, capable of earning their own living and capable of participating as true partners if only men could figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
The problem, I think, for both men and women is, as you pointed out, there's no teaching about this. And I've wondered, well, why is no one? We teach kids how to manage their money in school classes on economics. We teach career management of your nutrition program.
I'd even argue really quick that we're not even teaching that.
Well, I can go along with that to a point, but I mean, doing more than say 100 years before that.
Yeah.
We're making progress. But when it comes to relationships, our culture is that subject draws a unique silence. And I think the reason is quite simple, actually, because neither our parents nor our grandparents had answers.
Mm.
So for them, to not be saying anything was a direct consequence of the fact that they too had nothing to say and no real thinking about this. So for me, well, getting ahead of myself here, because I mean, for me, my first marriage didn't work out, and that crisis had me re-examining everything.
Yeah, so going back to that, which is a good segue back. So you get together 3 months, get married. And was there a period that it was bliss? Was it like really happy?
A good 5-10 minutes. It was really great.
This is post-marriage?
Yeah, post-marriage. But the problem was I had ignored all the red flags before then. And then when we were married, living in the same domicile, physical abuse started up.
But really quick, there were red flags during the 3 months of dating, or?
Of course.
Like, what were some of those?
Oh, well. But at the time, I had no registry in my brain.
Yeah, well, same with me. It's like I've been through three failed relationships, 2 5-year and 1 3-year. So I always tell people I've been through like 3 divorces. I mean, they're pretty long.
Well, it's in life, it's a lot easier to notice things that are rather than things that are not.
Okay.
But one of the red flags, or many of the red flags, were simply the absences of any sound foundation for saying, I know who she is and I love who she is, and vice versa. She didn't really know me.
So why was that? Why didn't you two know each other?
We had no idea how to get to know each other. I mean, it was just, I don't want to sound hopelessly self-critical, but it's a simple truth that I didn't know what I was doing, nor did she. We didn't conduct any sort of a mindful, intentional interview to determine whether or not we were truly compatible. And as a consequence, we found, surprise, surprise, we're very incompatible. We also...
Then what were some of those incompatibilities that started cropping up, and when did they crop up within the relationship?
Well, for one thing, one thing that even though I didn't have the words to articulate having an abuse-free relationship, if my prospective partner had said, well, you don't believe in hitting and yelling at each other, do you? If they had just said that, if she had just said that, I would have said, no. And well, would you mind if I yelled and hit you? Yes. And we didn't even have as primitive a discussion as that. So that would be a red flag that now if I were in a new relationship, looking at getting to know somebody and feeling a lot of heartfelt feelings about yearning to connect, that's the kind of information I would want to be collecting.
But yelling and hitting happened when in the relationship?
Like
5 minutes after the marriage?
Yeah, I mean, not literally maybe, but definitely within weeks.
And then you were just like, this is normal. This is just what...
No, I didn't think it was normal. I thought it was terrible and I didn't like it. But then my own irrational belief system kicked in and I knew I could change her by just loving her consistently.
Yeah.
And that love would heal her, and then she would blossom, and she would return my love ever so gratefully.
And where did you get that belief from?
I think largely from the church, but also from the pop culture around me. All we need is love.
Yeah.
I mean, the Beatles. Yeah. So I think every generation has its own songwriters and poets who say similar things about the power of love. And I would say now, in my own way, after getting my bachelor's degree in philosophy, I would say love is a necessary condition, but an insufficient condition for a successful relationship. I would never want to be in a relationship with a partner who didn't love me, but the fact that somebody loves me, even madly, deeply by itself, that's utterly inadequate, right? Because, well, what if you add abuse to that? She loves me and she abuses me. She loves me and has no sobriety. She loves me and doesn't respect me. She loves me and we have nothing in common. None of that is going to work. None of those combinations are going to work. And I had all of that.
And then, but you continued to stay and go forward and have a family. And did you think like...
Well, we had children.
But
we had progeny.
but before the kids came, the abuse was happening. Did you think that the kids were going to change?
No,
anything? Or we were just like content at that point. You're like, well, this is just my life. I'm not going to, like you were saying, back in the day, people just stayed because they stayed together. They didn't have other options. Was it like that situation where you're just like what kept you two
We
together?
were both religious. And so divorce was not really an option.
So was that the main factor?
What we were taught. Also, I was a control freak who didn't like to give up, and I didn't like to be a quitter. So I just thought I just need to try harder. I need to be patient. I need to work more at this. And in that first year, I think I was physically attacked at least a dozen times. And I had bruises in a circle that went from shoulder to shoulder, front and back, always below the collar, which was really interesting.
Well, that's how you could cover it up.
In hindsight, yeah, but never in the face.
Abuse 101.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to be abusive, you always want to hit your partner below the collar. And I was but I was just unwilling to accept defeat, and I lacked the humility to think that I might have made an error, that I could be wrong.
You didn't want to even like look at that?
No, that would be unacceptable because that would automatically lead to divorce, right? So I can't have made an error. I must be right. And I need to just be patient and work this thing out because, as we've talked about, marriage is hard.
Yeah.
That's the belief system. That's another belief that really further facilitates having a horrible relationship and just staying in, is that marriage is hard. And once you embrace that truth, which you hear from therapists, you hear it from parents, you hear it from the church. And then if marriage is hard, well, then I guess we're doing it right because it sure is freaking hard.
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, and then when the kids came, did you have a discussion about having kids and like, or did you just have kids? Like,
This was back in the 70s. And my wife then, we both decided we weren't ready for children, but she tried birth control pills and they really affected her physiologically and she couldn't tolerate them. And the alternative forms of birth control that we did use proved to be ineffective. And she got pregnant in the first year that we were married, had our first baby in the second year that we were married. And then it was like, well, now we really can't leave because we have a child. And having one child, we knew we didn't want to have one child be an only child. And so we waited 4 more years and had another child, and another 4 years and had another child. And
so you have 3 kids?
Yes, I have 3. And
I don't even know if I knew that you had 2 for some reason.
No, I think for us, there were so many things that we did think about and we did get right. And I do think it's smart to have your children spaced like that. And I do think having 3 didn't seem too crazy at the time, even though we were utterly under-financed. I mean, our finances were really a disaster. So it seemed right. And we both tried to be loving parents. So, there were some good things that came out of that and 3 wonderful lives that came out of that. But in hindsight, the relationship itself was truly fatally flawed. And I just didn't have the interview skills to preemptively avoid that kind of serious failure. And I think in hindsight, again, it's not as though a great interview, really getting to know somebody over a year or 2 could have prevented any possibility of disaster, but it would have significantly raised the odds in my favor.
And that's, again, like, we'll get to that eventually, but that's more what you're pitching. You're not telling people, like, you follow my formula and you're going to be all successful and
live happily ever
after. There's none of that. There's no guarantee of that, but it's like the odds are greatly increased. Like, just if you had the abuse conversation, that you wouldn't have gone forward in the relationship, and that would have never even happened.
I had a client years ago. She had married 11 times. And each one of her 11 marriages was to a guy with a problem drinking, an alcoholic, somebody with what we currently refer to as alcohol use disorder. Okay. Well, what went wrong? Well, what part of what went wrong is she normalized the behavior, and that, you just need a little crazy in the relationship in order for it to really be a relationship. There's no avoiding that because nobody's perfect. And she always met men where she used to hang out, which was in bars. And the men that she met, what a surprise, they all had drinking problems. And she never quite figured out that she was the one common denominator, and that she did what a lot of us do, male or female. We blame the opposite gender. And in her case, it was hands in the air. Men, what are you going to do with them? And they're all such drunks. They're no good drunks. And I've heard men say horrible things about women. It has to do with, with how you're picking. She never, ever came to accept that she herself was responsible for all those alcoholics and all the misery in her life. And I just think if we were more thoughtful, we could avoid those kinds of problems.
Was she able to accept that?
No, she never was.
So she's on her 12th?
I don't know where she is today or who she's with, but it's her story is a testimony to the hard-headedness, the stubbornness, and the unwillingness to give up on a flawed belief system, because it requires the painful work of looking within. And if I'm not willing to look within, I could say even my flawed marriage, which ended after 18 years. I initially had a lot of anger and resentment and hurt directed at her, but there was that nagging question that I was already exposed to from groups like AA, Al-Anon, and adult children of alcoholics, that, wait a minute, I am the one who did the picking. From my perspective, I picked her. And I've even had people argue with me about that. Oh no, my ex-wife picked me. Hold on, and she made you marry her? Well, no, but...
Well, I think that's a thing too in society. It's like women want to be picked or chosen, and then it's like, well, he picked me or she picked me, and it's just like, well, that doesn't mean you gotta...
So you get a path.
So you gotta...
You have no responsibility for who you married that way.
Yeah.
When actually, the only way we can fix a problem is taking responsibility for the problem in our life. The person with the pain is the person with the problem. And so I had a lot of pain. And then I realized I don't want ever to repeat this relationship again. I owe myself some time to really reflect on this and figure out what it was about me that led to my picking her.
But when was the first time, really quick, going back a bit, like, when did you realize that out of the 18 years you were together, when was that time where you kind of came to that aha moment and kind of realized like I need to get out of this? Or like,
yeah, it was because I began hating myself. And
in what year, I guess? How far in?
Well, it was toward the end, because there was in year number 1, there was like I said, a series of physically abusive episodes where she had hurt me. And then in that same year, she came out with me one time and something had changed and I just was not willing to be beaten anymore. She came at me and I slapped her with roughly 50% of my strength, and she turned away like that. And then it was a little bit like one of those scenes where the human being, you can see the demon possession and the eyes start glowing. And she came at me with that sort of a look again. And then I gave her something a little harder to think about. And she spun around and she sat down on the floor and began crying because I had hit her. I'd slapped her. And that was, for me, a real shameful violation of my values, and it put me in the same camp as my own father, who'd been physically abusive. And I just hated that. I hated that. So the seeds were sown quite early. And then in year 13, I remember very vividly having a conversation with her where she told me she was so angry with me, she really wanted to hit me. And the only reason she didn't was because she knew I would hit her back.
So after that first year, it stopped, and then 13 years later, or 12 years later, she wanted to hit you again, but she was afraid because,
she was afraid of hitting me because she knew I would hit her back. And then I thought, and my response at that time was the very embarrassing, superficial understanding. I said, good, because I was focused on the not getting hit part.
Yeah. The
other part that I was living with, married to, sleeping with someone who really wanted to hurt me physically. That was crazy that I would do that, right? In hindsight.
You're sleeping?
Yeah. I was back then because I was working a lot. I was exhausted all the time. But nevertheless, I mean, to have that thought, that way of thinking in my head, it's so embarrassing. And I only share it with people out loud because I really want people to understand they're not alone in their ridiculous mistakes and their foolhardy efforts and in their flawed thinking, because I've had it all. And then as the years went by and I continued to live in a loveless relationship, I found myself having emotional affairs with other women where I would be attracted, but still too religious to do anything to act on that. But boy, it was getting closer and closer and closer until finally, I think I met someone who was in exactly the mirrored position in her relationship. And the two of us ended up having an affair. And then the guilt, the remorse, the what have I done? And then stopping, putting an end to that, repenting.
At church?
No, not publicly. I didn't have the courage to do anything like that. And thank goodness, because they wouldn't have handled it properly anyway. But because nobody would have looked at root causes, for my impaired decision making.
And how long did the affair last?
Oh, very brief.
Oh.
Very brief. But I realized I had to get out because I was turning into somebody I hated. And the parallel in an alcoholic family would be the partner who doesn't drink or who drinks at a moderate level is overwhelmed with the drunkenness of their partner until they need to drink just to cope with the reality of being married to a drunk.
Yeah.
And they too turn themselves into someone that they despise, someone that they hate. And I could see that, and it was a bit too late, but I didn't feel as though it were too late to start over. And that I just finally, and that's what it took, I think, for me to start over. And that there's something too, I would say to everyone who's had an affair or is as dysfunctional as that is, and I think it's highly dysfunctional because it violates our code of honor. We've made promises, we violated our word, that kind of thing. What's appealing about it is that I can join egos with another person and have a little bit of a wake up that, oh, I am still lovable. I am still attractive.
Yeah.
I do have the capacity to be joyful and to feel love both from the other person and for the other person. And it's sort of a reminder, a post-it note, if you will, in history that says, no, you don't have to do it this way. You could do it this other way. And so that was when I stepped away, separated, and then...
And it was your choice to do that?
My choice to separate.
How did that go down?
Oh, terribly, of course, as it usually does. And then she filed for divorce, and then we became divorced. And in my mind, I'm not interested in anyone to blame, whether there's enough blame to go around for everybody. But what was empowering is that realization that it was my responsibility for managing my life, and I had picked her.
And that was one of the first early light bulbs that came on. So it's like you picked her, so you have to take responsibility.
And that was a saving grace. It was far more helpful than self-pity, and it was far more effective than blaming the other person to realize I was responsible for that. And I had just finished grad school, and I was now an intern as a marriage and family therapist. And
was that education helping you come to that realization?
Not at all. Not at all. They weren't dealing with that kind of part of the human experience at all. But there was another secondary kind of inquiry line of inquiry in that not only had I picked her, and they needed to look at what was going on inside of me that I would pick someone like that, but for 18 years, every day I had made the decision, we say one day at a time. Every day I had decided to stay with her. So I had to take a look at that. What was that all about? And, a lot of people listening to this would think, well, it's for the children, or we have to stay together for the children, which is a terrible thinking error. Because children do not benefit from a highly dysfunctional marital situation. Yeah,
I was just hearing, because I've heard you say that we want to be role models to our children,
right?
Loving relationship. And that was on the same podcast I was talking about earlier. They were talking about that same thing. It's like that is like the strongest way to teach somebody, by being that role model, by showing your child what love actually looks like.
Years ago, though, I heard a saying that I think, or a line of reasoning that makes it more explicitly clear, in that children, it is said, learn almost nothing by what you say to them. They learn a little bit more by what you
What you
do,
do, yeah.
but mostly they learn from who you are.
Mm.
And who I was at that time in my life was a miserable human being who lacked humility, and who was still very much a control freak, and who didn't really have any understanding of how to be in an adult relationship. So if my children were learning that, and I do believe that's what they were learning about me, and I think they internalize that and think, okay, we're good to go. And they've had their own marital issues over the years, and will continue to do so, just like the rest of us. But I don't know that my example was so great. I think that the church promoted the idea that we should all stay married for the sake of the children, because the institution of marriage was so important, and divorce was such a sin. But really, as a humanist today, I would say, no, people are far more important than the rituals and institutions that are designed to serve them. The human takes precedence over those institutions. And if the institutions are no longer working, then it's time for the human to strike out and do something that does work for them.
Yeah.
So,
which is what you did. So then you picked her, take responsibility. You also stayed. What else was coming up for you around that time, and where were you at, like, emotionally, I guess?
well, none of us are just one thing, right? So yes, I was an unhappily married man, but I was also figuring out my own life. I was a college student when I got married, and then grad school just didn't seem to work for me. I didn't get accepted because I was really looking for some more financial support. So I decided I will become a carpenter. I became a carpenter for 6 years, and then I was recruited to work in a fundamentalist church as a pastor. And I did work as a pastor for some years. And then I realized, after going to Al-Anon and adult children of alcoholics groups.
And why did you go there?
A friend suggested it because I had talked about my mother's drinking, and he was a recovering alcoholic. And this friend suggested that I should maybe go. And he actually went with me to a time or two. And at first I was still thinking, oh, I could really help these people.
You could
The
help
groups,
those people.
yeah, the groups that were designed for people like me, I was coming in with this arrogance and this, big swollen head, thinking I can help these poor people.
Even while you're in a marriage, that's
Disaster.
That's
That's a
you're
disaster.
hating yourself.
Yeah, I was a pastor during that period of time, but I decided, after going to, I think, about a year of Al-Anon and ACOA groups, I was really being given what I had come to get, and I was feeling so much clearer in my thinking, and I could see the flaws in my behaviors. I could see that I was still very much a control freak, and I started letting go of all that and really beginning to trust the universe again, which I called God at that time. But, I realized this is really working. And that really encouraged me to delve more deeply into some sort of psychotherapy that would be beyond just mere self-help groups. And so I decided to go back to school. I did. And in 3 years, I got a master's degree in counseling, and it led to my getting licensed. But it was long before I was ever licensed, my marriage already fell apart, which is actually there's a very high rate of divorce in marriage and family therapy grad schools, because people are going there trying to figure out what the heck is going on, or how can I do better. And
I feel like that's even with, like, going to grad school to be a writer. It's like it was the same thing.
It was hard on marriages.
Marriages, relationships, all of it, I feel like, disintegrated. I mean,
Yeah.
mine did. I left Chicago to go out to Idaho, and I know a girl came there with her boyfriend. That ended. Other people were like married, now they're divorced. It's like it was a really like,
My theory, I haven't thought about that before as to include your grad degree, but I think what is happening there is we're going from an unhappy relationship into an affiliation with, say, a school, in your case or mine. And in that school, we're finding more like-minded people who are actually far more compatible than the partner we picked. And so the comparison, even though we're not consciously making it,
yeah.
we're really feeling it. And it feels like, I found my tribe.
Yeah.
This is amazing. These people are so intelligent, and I can have real conversations with them.
Yeah.
And they're saying things that nobody in my church would ever say, or they're saying things that my wife and I would never say to each other, and they're laughing and they're feeling comfortable within themselves. And I think it was the environment of school plus the people in that environment that all in all, it was a real breath of fresh air in my life.
Yeah. Same with me.
Even though I think between school and Al-Anon, that was the end of my marriage.
So,
but it was a little bit like the Indian god of destruction, right? I mean, you have to have destruction before you can have rebirth. And destroying that which is fatally flawed. When Shiva destroys that which is fatally flawed, and then you're able to sort of begin over again with this new knowledge, it was not a journey that was pleasant, but it was definitely necessary, and I wouldn't give it up for anything.
So you got divorced in grad school then, or after grad school?
Right after grad school, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. And then where was your like emotional state after you could just graduate, which should be like a good time, but then you're going through divorce. So it's like,
yeah,
and you're also getting a
started seeing
counselor
I
helping.
started seeing a therapist. I was very depressed. I was thinking about suicide. Fantasizing is a better word. I was fantasizing about suicide
Because you just wanted to,
in the pain.
the pain of who you became. You didn't like yourself that much where you wanted to.
Everything that I had worked for my entire adult life had fallen in ashes. There was just such an abject sense of failure. And I think
But you also had
I'd been avoiding that by avoiding divorce, right?
yeah.
But then I started going to that damn Al-Anon program, and I started feeling better and better and better, freer and freer to be myself. And I was telling the truth much more frequently. And yeah, and that resulted in my divorce
Yeah.
between school and Al-Anon.
But it's like you have this like deep low, but then it's like you're slowly like almost if you didn't have Al-Anon or school, you might have been gone. I mean, possibly, I don't, but I feel like those two things really were some sort of bright light for you. I mean, because I know grad school, I was in a really dark place myself. And it took me 2 years to get into a school, and I finally got accepted, and it was just like, thank God I don't have to work at Whole Foods anymore. It's like, this is a nightmare. And I was just like, it was such like, I remember crying, like driving to the city from this highway, and you could see the skyline in the distance, and just like so.
Did it look like Oz, the city of
Kind of,
Oz?
yeah. It was just Chicago. Like I'm going on 57 North, and I'm just like, just taking in the beauty of the city, and just that I'm leaving, and it wasn't like I like Chicago, but it was also like I had this drive to write, and it's like I couldn't get in anywhere because I write weird stories, or they just weren't up to par. And I don't want to blame the teachers, but I know for me it was like if I didn't have that, I really questioned like what my life would have been like. I felt like that was like I needed that, like kind of helped me during that dark time for myself. So I feel like for you, it's like having at least that could have possibly helped. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, yeah, everything that was positive helped. I mean, everything. So just meeting one person on one day or helping one client, in my work, all of that helped. Everything that was good and positive helped. The thing that really woke me up, and maybe we could end on this bright and cheery note of suicide prevention.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, there came a day, and I had two friends, a man and a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and they were also recent divorcees, and they had the same problems I had. They were having insomnia, and they were waking up at 3 a.m. just like I was, the witching hour, I think it's called, and we were all struggling with sleep deprivation, and we were all depressed, and we formed a pact that if one of us was insomniac and desperate, that they could call one of the others, and that we would agree to, in terms of protecting them, to not call more than once per week.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had two phone calls, two lifelines you could use. And you know what? Having that, I never did make a call because that helped me get over it, to realize I wasn't alone. And then the other part of it that really helped, I was very startling and I think I physically startled, because I realized in my fantasizing about an end to the suffering, what I was actually doing, besides providing immediate relief, knowing I wasn't trapped in this life, I could escape. But besides that, I was systematically desensitizing myself to the idea of hurting myself or killing myself. And when I realized that, I still wasn't at that point ready to die. And I realized, I need to stop this right now, or I will get to that point where I do something. And I really wasn't ready to call it quits just then. And I don't know if it's because I had enough friendship or enough love or enough whatever was going right in my life. But I mean, this is going on while I'd moved out. I was on my own in a small apartment. I have no bed, no furniture.
It's a classic scenario.
I have my clothes in the closet. I have to get dressed and go to work every day. I had my sleeping bag there. And I think my first purchase was, it was a CD player. Okay. So I could at least fill my space with some music. And after that, it was a mattress, not a bed, it's a mattress. Because I was broke. I was still supporting my family. And it was a tough time, but it was as bad as it was. And it was very bad, obviously, or I wouldn't have been thinking about suicide. It still felt better than being in that marriage because I didn't have the feelings the hopelessness, perceiving that I was trapped and living a meaningless existence. I felt like there was hope for a life of meaning and hope that I could do something with my life that I could really enjoy. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea what direction I was going to go, but at least I figured out I wanted to be a therapist, and that was enough of a beginning to keep me alive.
Wow. And then from there, then you start dating eventually.
Yeah, I was dating pretty early. My then wife had made it clear, that's it, it's over. So I started dating immediately. And then she found out I was dating and she said, that's it, it's over. And I said, well, wait a minute, I thought you said it was over back there. And it was still somehow trying to control the outcome. Like maybe we could get back together. Maybe after all this pain, we'll have some amazing reconciliation story that would really renew all of the beauty and magic that I'd gone into marriage with initially. And it was just this big, I think the expression has something to do with monkeys and footballs, but it was just a crazy time of back and forth. And by the time the divorce was filed, she was marrying another guy. So, and how long after? Like ink was still drying. So, that was
3 months. Like when?
Yeah, I mean, right away. I mean, she was right away marrying
another person.
Yeah, so there was somebody else in her life.
And then where were you at? Were you wanting to get married again? But did you feel bad about that? Because I know sometimes
I didn't want to get married again, or at least I hadn't met somebody. And I also felt I felt like I was still in rehab. You know, like when you injure yourself and you're in physical therapy
Mm-hmm.
and you're not quite ready to get back into the game of
Mm-hmm.
playing football or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
I did not feel ready. And that took a minute. And I knew I needed some time. And I knew that, to quote an old therapist, before there can be an us, there has to be a you and an I.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no sense of my own identity still at that point. And I knew I wanted to work on that. And part of you know what a Rorschach ink blot is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we project on the ink blots what
Yeah,
we think they mean or what we see. And for me, my little apartment became kind of my own projection of building a life.
Mm.
So buying dishes, getting pots and pans, getting a kitchen table, you know, slowly building something that was livable physically,
Mm.
paralleled the spiritual efforts I was making at building a life.
Mm. And were you conscious of, because you have something called creating a life worth living, were you conscious that you were doing that, or were you just,
Please.
no,
I
you
was
were just like, I
barely
just got to get up
conscious of, no, I was very, you know, I think consciousness for me was something very slow in coming. And I feel embarrassed to say that because there are probably 20-year-olds listening to this who are going to be, what's wrong with that guy? But it's just the way I was reared. And I think it has, and maybe just the way I am, it really took me time to figure out that I did need to be a happy single man
Mm.
with a life worth living, because otherwise, what kind of woman am I going to attract? But at the same time, this process is so slow and halting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back,
Yeah.
that I was still looking at women who were badly damaged because I was still seeing myself as the knight in shining armor who could rescue them and take care of them.
After the marriage, you're still
After the
you're
marriage,
still focused on women, or you're still,
focus is too strong a word, but I was still doing that. It was almost through muscle memory.
Mm.
And if you had said to me verbally what you just said, I would have said, no, I don't think I should do that, or I don't think I want to do that. But I was doing that. So I had a lot of thinking that was developing. And again, I think people watching this can be developing in their thoughts, but then go on and have an absolutely horrid day where they repeat all their worst behaviors.
Mm.
Because it takes some time. There's a lag between the development of some new thinking and the development of new behavior.
Mm.
And we only get different outcomes once we've changed the latter. Changing behavior results in different outcomes, but you have to start with your thinking first, I think. So, at least in my experience, and to see the way I'm living isn't really working for me. And a lot of times I speak with gratitude of the institution of divorce because it's a legal way of humbly accepting that I made a mistake and I need to start over.
Mm.
It's a little bit, I suppose, like the emotional version of declaring bankruptcy,
Mm-hmm.
and which is about finances. And it's a hard step for people to take, whether it's bankruptcy or divorce, but such a wonderful thing to live in an age where divorce is an acceptable option.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't always so. Not even in my own lifetime was it always so.
But then, so you're dating people, and so are you, like, how are you dating? Are you looking for like a partner? Or are you just dating and not having any plan, or like,
I'm just dating pretty thoughtlessly and more observing.
so you're kind of reverting back to the 20-year-old of just like,
He didn't really date. He didn't really date. It was more of a, that whole Happy Days TV show with the Fonz dating and having a little black book of all the women he's
or you
dating.
became the Fonz then, like in this?
No, but that institution of dating was not part of my life as an 18, 19, 20-year-old.
Okay. But were you still doing the criteria of she's attractive and she wants to be seen with me in public?
I would still date to get to know people.
Mm.
Well, that was actually a new thing. So
Yeah, I was going to say.
but my marriage and divorce was so exquisitely painful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, it would be like asking a torture victim, would you like to go back and at least meet your torturer? And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I was convinced I would never remarry. I didn't want the government in my private life.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be trapped. I didn't want to be in that kind of legal situation ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I felt lucky that I had escaped with my skin intact, even though there was no real money or property. I still had many years of fairly expensive, difficult child support payments to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I was glad to make them. Those were my children. I was glad to support them, and I never missed a payment. But I'm, unlike my own father, but I'm really grateful I did not marry during that time. But I was learning, and I started with back to basics, like developing a circle of friends. And for me, that meant male friends, where I wouldn't be confusing and crossing the streams of romance with friendship.
Well, you didn't have friends when you were married?
I didn't. I put all of my eggs in one basket, all my bets to the center of the table. And I just said, let it ride. So developing friends, and this is why I push actually an idea from Alfred Adler, a contemporary of Sigmund Freud, the idea that every man, in order to be truly happy, has to be successful in developing friendship. And for me, friendship was a platonic affection, free of the animal passions. And I like women in that way that men like women, and I can't say that I would be able to ever be friends with a woman. And so I focused on men because I had really ignored men much of my life, except for those 6 years of being a carpenter. Most of my life was spent at school or, in the company of female teachers and trying to get together with women. And it was just really, it felt like a good work, something that felt right and proper to develop friendships with men. And I still have friends from that era.
And the definition of friendship is just hanging out, having a good time?
No, my definition would be beyond, say, a work buddy you could go out and have a drink with after work. It's men who help me become a better man. So the kind of men who, and that may not look right to my mom, whatever men I might pick out with that search criteria, but the men who would help a stuck up, rigid person like me have a better developed sense of humor. Or the men who would help me not take myself so seriously, or the men who would challenge me in my irrational thinking. And I found that the men I was picking, and it was a flawed selection process. It wasn't perfect by any means. I tried to be friends with men who weren't available emotionally. I think a lot of women can relate to that. Trying to have relationships with men like that. And it works the same in friendship as it does in romance. But I had some guys in my life who were just transformational friends. They helped me see myself so much more clearly in what I was doing. So I'm grateful for that. And those were all early days. And in the meantime, I'm doing the second thing. He talked about career. Alfred Adler said, you got to be successful in your career in order to achieve happiness. And for the first time in my life as a 38-year-old, I was really trying hard to be successful at a career that I and I alone had control over. I didn't have a boss. I was in private practice, and I was just committed to doing the best I could. And so then love, I was dating, but I went through like a year or more of no dating at all. I wasn't.
What did you do during that time?
Well, you mean
like
masturbation?
No. Like, what were you like reading? Were you like just thinking? Were you coming up with any of the technology? Like, were you looking back on your relationship?
I was doing a lot of what
was going
now I would call critical incident debriefing.
So during that time when you were alone, you were doing that, and that's one of the pillars of the technology.
Yeah, I think so. And when I would go on dates, I would continue the systematic debriefing of that critical incident. So even women I was dating, I would say, how is it that you're single? And I did the research on why their
So you
relationships
want
fell
to know?
apart.
Okay.
And then I would volunteer my own stories. And I don't know that it was always welcome, but I would want to talk about my own relationship flaws and personal character trait flaws, and
So you were being honest and open and
more than I ever had been. I wouldn't want to say it's a binary where I went from being dishonest to honest,
yeah.
but I think my first real experiences with honesty were going to Al-Anon and listening to women in the room, mostly women being honest, and then realizing, oh, you will not die if you are honest. Okay, I'm going to jump into this because it sounds very liberating. And I even started being honest at church, which was revolutionary. But in dating, I found myself openly, a woman would say, I could never be with any man who'd ever cheated on his wife.
So
And
you're like, I'm out.
I'm probably the wrong guy for you then. And I would share this very embarrassing failure on my part.
So that happened, and you said that, and then you shared the story that you shared with me.
Yeah.
The affair.
And then I didn't share the whole story, but she did that. I had committed that particular trespass. And I remember one woman in particular who I really liked, and I would have loved to have gotten to know better. She just looked down, looked up. I think I'm ready to go home now. And I said, okay. And I got up because I wasn't looking to present as perfect anymore. I wasn't looking.
That's a big thing.
Oh, it was so liberating.
Because I feel like that's another thing that most people do not do, or most people are putting on some sort of show.
Yes. And by there's so many problems downstream that result from that presentation of self. And so many good things. It's really like a litmus test of the other person's compassion or potential for compassion, for understanding, for being equally vulnerable themselves. Because who among us doesn't have some highly embarrassing error in judgment? We all do. They may be at different levels, but we all have those errors in judgment. And just to let the other person in on who I really am. Not that I'm an adulterer, that's who I am. No, because I'm more than one thing, but that was part of my history. That was part of the story that got me to where I am. And the pain of being in that situation was also very informative, because I don't want to be living a life where that's something that comes up regularly or that proves to be an overwhelming temptation. I want to be in a happy life where I can, keep my word and be who I am. And I also want to be free to tell my partner, and then nowadays it's my wife of 31 years. I want to be able to tell my wife who I am and what I need on any given day.
What age are you again when you get divorced? Are you like
38.
And then you take a year off or so, you're thinking about stuff, reflecting.
No, it wasn't like there was a year. For the next 4 years I was single, but
So 38 to 42, you're single.
Yeah, but I was dating, and I had met my future wife in that time period. I had met her around age 40.
Age 40.
Yeah. And she was scandalously younger. But I had... She was about 10 years younger. And
Is that scandalously?
For me, I was like horrified, but...
why were you horrified?
Because it was scandalously younger. Try to keep up.
But is that in this, is 10 years something scandalously? It's not like she's 20, like 30. I mean, I don't know, like 30 and 20, I guess would be more scandalously, but she's 30. I feel like
and she was a mom, and she'd already been married and divorced. But, I think I laughed because what was really going on, and this is, I find, a nearly universal behavior. People who don't know what the rules are of rational living, they tend to have a knowingness that there are rules, and then they just appropriate rules from society. And I had a rule that said, I think plus or minus 5 years would be okay. That would be my range.
So you gave yourself.
Yeah, so I could date women 33 or 42, but or 43, but I don't think I could be. And it was weird too, because that's the other thing. I always push my clients to date at least 30 potential mates. And some of those dates, of course, will be one-time dates and not followed up, but others will be over a 3-month period or longer. But to realize what the human race has to offer. And I was shocked when one of the older women I was dating was really one of the most youthful and enjoyable women I've ever met. And some of the younger women who were just amazing and great in their own way, it did feel a little creepy, like I was dating my mom and that generation. There was just something, and the takeaway is, oh, chronological age is an irrelevant variable. So I just threw that out.
Okay.
And now I say scandalously young more as a joke, but because I think there's no reason somebody who's 40 couldn't fall in love with somebody in 20 and vice versa. I could imagine that happening, and I don't think that's weird. And I do know men who are 20 years younger than their wives, and they fell in love and they seem to be happy in their relationships. So I think age is really highly overrated.
So then how many would you say that, because you say you recommend 30 dates, do you think that you went on 30 dates during that time from 38?
Dating 30 different women?
30 different women?
Yeah, that's not just 30 dates, but 30 different women. I would say pretty close, yeah.
Pretty close. And are you still picking the same people? Because you said earlier on.
That's a really good point, because that was another part of the development, right? So my body was having a hard time keeping up with my mind's insights, and I kept picking poorly. But I noticed...
Was your body just picking on attraction?
Attraction, availability, flirtatiousness, all that kind of thing. But then I noticed, probably you could see it more clearly. You know how when you see a little kid, they don't seem to be growing if you're with them all the time.
Yeah.
But then if you go for a year between visits, like, whoa, you sure did a lot of growing. Well, it was like that. If you not look at every date in sequence, but you say jump forward like 5 different women forward or more, you would see improvement.
And then what were you discovering about women? Like,
how much they had to offer and how much more wonderful they were than I'd ever imagined. And that, my whole paradigm of taking care of women was so highly flawed, because I was meeting such wonderful women who were also looking for partnership. And we may not have been right for each other, but I could see they're going to make somebody an amazing partner.
So you're dating too, like at this point, for compatibility, it sounds like.
Well, eventually, not the first 5 probably.
So you were
I was still looking for love because I was starved for love.
And you were getting in relationships right away, or like what?
I was not getting in commitments right away. I was, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who advised the American government early to avoid all foreign commitments. And I just started.
So you took that on as that's how you got the.
I started avoiding commitments, and really, because in hindsight, I meet people all the time who are committed after one date.
Yeah,
still, it's common. 2025 right now, and they're still getting committed because somebody threw them a mercy date, and they don't dare date somebody else. And I think again, the strategy of the 1950s makes more sense. Why would you not date as many people as possible? Because at the end of the day, I think it's about comparison shopping.
Well, that is, I think, a huge shift for me. Like, I was not dating for compatibility at all, but now that I feel like if you really want to, again, increase your odds of sustaining a long-term relationship, I feel like that's the way to do it.
And finding happiness, right? And which is the only way to have that sustainable relationship. So finding your tribe, I think, is really important. And I realized I really like and need not only intelligent women, I always knew that, but I need women with a modicum of education, or at least intellectual curiosity, where they are willing to engage intellectually and have intellectual discussions, and that really, for me, put an end to a great deal of loneliness if I could have that kind of a relationship.
So then did women want to date you like long term, or were they like saying like why aren't you asking me to be your girlfriend? Or
women wanted to date me, but did they want to date me long term? I don't know if they would have. Most of the time I found myself dumping them.
You were dumping them?
And
why was that? Just because you were finding things
feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. You know, we have to accept that we are mammals, right?
Yes.
And for those who hesitate, considering whether or not they are animals, once you've admitted you're a mammal, all mammals are animals. So my animal nature, for me to work sexually as a male, I have to be attracted to somebody.
So you weren't attracted to them?
I wasn't always, once I got to know them, I wasn't always attracted. And I found myself even realizing I'm not doing a disservice to a woman by breaking up or by not calling her back for multiple dates, because I'm doing her a favor, because I think every woman out there who is looking for love owes herself the responsibility for making sure the man who she's with and settles for is a man who's crazy about her.
That's another piece of your technology that you say.
Yeah, I think that every one of us need to be loved deeply. And sometimes, again, in our denial, we normalize a lack of love and say, well, we're just not like that. We're not like you, Steve. But I think if you ask single people, if you ask young people, would you rather be with someone who could take you or leave you, or with someone who was really president of your fan club, as my wife likes to call herself? Well, most of us would tend to say, oh, I'd really want somebody who was crazy about me, for sure. And if that doesn't exist on a binary, but a continuum, how much love would you want? Most of us would want to push it all the way over to the far side of the continuum, right? Where all the love is. Why would we want? Now, part of that is, I think every adult needs to understand that they can fall madly deeply for someone, and it can still be the wrong person for a relationship. So the love is really, for loving people, the love is rather the easiest part of it. But then there's all that other stuff we've already talked about, compatibility and respect, and what about sobriety, little things like that really matter.
Yeah. So then by the time you get to age 40 and you meet your current wife, Sharon, did you have like criteria in mind as far as like, I don't want to have abuse in my relationship, I want to fully get to know this person?
Yes, I did. And I remember as we met long distance, we talked over the phone.
Really quick, were you like writing these ideas down, or you're just like, this is just, I don't want to jump into commitment because Benjamin Franklin.
No, I wasn't writing anything down. And I wasn't thinking Stephen Ing had anything worth sharing with anybody, because I was still coming off 18 years of highly flawed, attempts at having a loving relationship. But when I asked my wife, would you be interested in an would you ever be interested in an abuse-free relationship that was based on equality? Not that we would be the same, but that we'd be of equal value in a relationship, of equal worth. There's this long silence, and I've already had long silences from other women.
Were you telling women this prior to that too?
Yeah. And I was getting women who were saying, I don't know if that's even possible, or, I don't know, we're German, or we're redheads, or we're Italians, or we're whatever it was they were ethnically. And I wasn't getting any takers for that. That was kind of a funny thing. And then she was the first woman to say, that would be wonderful. And I just felt this peace come over me to meet at least one like-minded person who could see the value in having a safe relationship that would be based on two human beings who had equal value.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, what a great thing. If you've never experienced that, it's a pretty amazing thing once you do. And I know that there are millions of people in this country who have not experienced that. So, in fact, I got a letter not too long ago from a guy in the Midwest who's quite a fan of this podcast. And he said, yeah, but I live in the Midwest. And there might be, there's a small town nearby. There's a couple thousand people in it, but there's nobody for me. And I'm not going to question him on that. I'm sure he's done the research. And he seemed like a really nice guy, judging from a couple of letters. And what is he supposed to do? Well, I met my wife long distance over the telephone. I think that that's a possible way for things to happen, but also to travel, to meet, to be open to meeting people in other cities. There's got to be a way with the technology available to us in the 21st century for us to meet more than just the people in our small little part of the world.
Yeah.
And I know that is. Today, if I were suddenly to be single through some unforeseen event, I would be looking for my desired demographic of Italian Jewish women who believe in equality, who are abuse-free or at least interested in it, who really like, some of the same things I like. And if I had to go to Italy to find them, I would do that. We travel around the world for our careers. Why would we not travel to find our life partners?
How early on in the conversation with Sharon did you pitch that abuse-free life?
We knew each other for about 90 days before we actually met in person. And it was sometime in those 90 days, but it certainly wasn't the first month, probably, in the third month.
So within 3 months of conversation, that's when you brought it up?
Oh, definitely. But toward the end of that 3 months of...
And what were you talking about prior?
It was a business call at first, and she was a salesperson looking to sell art.
Yeah.
And I was an art collector who was looking for art that I liked. And I had visited that gallery a year before, filled out some paperwork, giving them my contact information. And she wasn't working there at the time. And a year later, she calls me to talk to me about whether or not I'm still interested. And I was. I remember hanging up the phone at my office. We were still using landlines back then, 1994. And I hung up the phone thinking, wow, what a nice voice. Too bad I'm never going to meet her. And then as the months wore on, we got to know each other because she was determined to make a sale, but we also were getting to know each other.
And were you conscious of, because another concept you have is the intentional interview, where you slowly get to know people and you slowly disclose things. Like, were you doing that intentionally? Like, were you like...
I think with my wife, there was a bit of the accidental interview because I was still thinking, she lives 1,000 miles away. This is not going to be a dating relationship. Okay. But then as time went on, I realized, she had originally come from LA, had relocated to Texas to start a business, and when her marriage broke up, had relocated to Scottsdale, Arizona, and she was perfectly at ease with the idea of moving to explore a potentially wonderful relationship. And she had the courage to do that. And I just had never experienced having a woman who was that into me, who was willing to do that. And of course, my first thought is not, well, how I must be so wonderful that she would do this, but my first thought was anxiety about being responsible. Like, what if it goes wrong?
Yeah.
I already knew she had a 3-year-old boy, and she had a job and a place, and if she relocates and it doesn't work out, then the one who's ruined her life. But over time, I keep learning more and more that women are actually adults. I know that's shocking, but they are capable of making adult decisions and choosing their own way. So I helped her when she would visit, and she secured a job. She found an apartment. She took care of all of her own business, and she began living in the same city I'm in, Reno, Nevada. And then we started dating locally.
And were you dating exclusively?
We were at that time.
So
I refused to date exclusively while she was living 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
But I was certainly willing to do that after her big commitment. She'd pushed a lot of chips into the middle of the
Yeah.
table.
So after that, then you committed to each other to be exclusive once she was here.
Mm-hmm.
And then how long, and are you still, and then you're doing the abuse-free life, you're living it. Did it ever happen? Did
we ever get abusive?
Get abusive?
There were minor incidents, and for my part, I can say minor in the sense of, I know I seem like a very nice person, but I can really use a shitty tone of voice sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've been working on it for a long time now since knowing Sharon, but I find myself, like if I get exasperated, you'll hear sarcasm kind of creep into my voice, which I think between two equals is a sign of disrespect. And I would say sentences that in all but words, the tone would convey the meaning. Are you really that stupid that you don't get this? So that she would confront me on that, and I would encourage her to do so. And I apologized, took responsibility for that, and I recommitted to trying harder. And if you're sincere in that commitment, failures become less and less frequent. And if you're charting them on a graph, they become, if 10 is the worst, they become less and less serious. So until they finally disappear for the most part, I would say it's been years since I've used any kind of behavior like that.
Yeah. And then you were continuing to get to know her through the intentional interview, just more and more.
Yeah.
And then at this point too, you had a life worth living is what you described, because you had your own place, you had a job.
I had friends. And instead of diving into a relationship, which I used to do, where I'm spending all my waking free hours with her.
That didn't happen.
That did not happen. And she developed.
Was mad about that?
With Sharon?
Yeah.
No, she welcomed that because I was very forthright in explaining that I need friends and I need alone time, downtime where I can think about things. And I want to spend time with you. So it was roughly a third, and a third of my week.
Well, I feel like even admitting that would be terrifying to some men to say, because it's like if a woman moves across
1,000 miles,
to live with me, and I'm like, hey, by the way,
which wasn't with me,
not living with you,
but living in the same town.
In the same town, being like, hey, Wednesdays are my solo days, or I get my friends on Friday. It's like some girlfriends could be like, you move this far, and then this is how this guy is.
That's it.
That
but we talked about all these things. I didn't just announce this and lower the boom and say, "This is all you get, babe."
Yeah,
cutting you off for the rest of the week. No, it was more like, I know you want to make friends in the community, and I know you'll need friends to help balance out your life here. You can't make me your entire social support network, and I need to continue my work in that. And then sometimes I do need some time alone. And she was an adult. She read. She had a job. She had a child. And she did start developing friendships right away in the community. And so she too valued the downtime apart from the relationship. So, I think it was actually a lot easier. And I dare say you and any other man listening to this, if a woman came to you and said, I really need some time alone when we're dating, because it just feels, I don't want to feel that feeling of being smothered. I think most of us could understand that. Most of us would get along with that.
I do now, 100%. I mean, but I feel like other people don't, or they may have some issues with it, or even someone I date could have issues with it, but then they're just not the right person for me.
Well, sure. And then think also about if you have real friends, and I don't know where you are with your friendships, but for me, I had learned the hard way, I need friends. They are essential to my mental health.
Yeah.
And I had spent years developing friendships by that
Hmm.
point, and I really wanted to continue um, letting my friends know that they were deeply valued by me.
Hmm.
And I too had children of my own, and spending time with my children, with my friends, on my career and downtime. It's not like I was willing to be embraced in this romance 24/7. You can't have a life worth living and then give it all up once you meet somebody and still
Yeah.
say, well, it was a life worth living.
But that that's how most people do it, though. I
But that's
feel like.
because they don't have a life worth living.
Yeah. And then through all this time too, like you talk a lot about sexual needs, and we're not going to get into that whole thing, but you were obviously having discussions about sexual compatibility and also talking about sex, I would imagine, early on,
For sure.
which is prior to her even moving there, because a lot of thing that I've heard you say, like people can do it, but they can't talk about it, which I feel like is
Oh,
such a huge
it's
thing.
it's a big truth about Americans. We
Yeah.
Americans will have sex with anybody,
Uh-huh.
but but we won't talk about having
Mhm.
sex with anybody.
Yeah.
And when I say talk about having sex, I don't mean positions and lubes and
Hmm.
sex toys. I mean, things like frequency. What does sex mean to you?
Hmm.
What's gone on in your sexual history? What would be your ideal kind of sex life? And I think that we really all owe that to ourselves to have those conversations
Yeah.
if we're qualifying a partner for a sexually monogamous relationship.
Hmm. How long was it then before like you moved in together? So just
We
to give
dated
people
long distance for 1 year. We dated locally for one
one
year,
year,
and
so
then
it's
she
2 years
accepted my invitation to move in.
on year three.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, just giving
It
people
felt
an
about
idea.
right.
Okay,
It felt about right.
at
And
the pace and coming off the where you are, and you felt that you were compatible, that you did all those sort of like you've had all the discussions and.
and remember, I was coming off of a lot of fear, like so many people who've gone through a bad marriage.
Hmm.
The idea of diving into another marriage just scared the crap out of me. So I was like,
Yeah.
even then, I'm not proposing marriage. I'm saying, I'd like you to move in if you're open to that. And she
Hmm.
was open to that. And then we started living together. And I was still very gun shy of getting the law involved in the form of a holy
Hmm.
matrimony kind of contract.
Yeah.
And then time went by. Gosh, what was it? 9 more years went by. And by then we're now working together. She's managing my practice. I'm only experiencing the success that I am experiencing largely because of her efforts. And so, as a team, I realized I don't care if we get married and then get divorced because she deserves half of everything
Mm.
because she's earned it. But before even that, I had changed my will. I had changed her to the beneficiary of my insurance.
Mm.
And then when we did get married, there were other changes financially because she realized at some point, if she loses me, like through breaking up, she loses her job, she loses her
Mhm.
income, and she loses her home.
Yeah.
So she really, I think, made a very strong, compelling case for having some sense of security there. And I think
Mhm.
that seemed to me not to be rescuing, but it seemed to me to be just fairness,
Yeah.
just simple fairness.
So then 9 years later, you get married. And
Yeah.
then and then also really quick, like you always say, like the thing that sustains the relationship is intimacy. And
Yes.
that's the ability to safely share your life with another person as you define it
Right.
from Dennis Bargozzi or David, was it
Yeah. Dennis
Deb
Barguzzi.
Bargozzi? Yeah.
His
And that is only, you're only to get to that level of intimacy and that comfort when you are not having abuse, when you're just having authentic conversations, because it's like you're just more and more you feel safer and safer and safer to be yourself. And when you are that way, you're both evolving in your own ways and changing in different ways, and that's what keeps the relationship sustaining throughout now 31 years. Is that somewhat correct? Or
Yeah, I think largely you got it. So a great sex life is based on two things, right? Titillation, have to be as an animal, attracted to her and
Hmm.
aroused by her physical attributes. Um, if we're barely containing our nausea when we're looking at someone, that's
Hmm.
not going to
That's not
work.
gonna.
So, um, but we're also all aging, right? Imperceptibly, day by
Hmm.
day, and the trait that or the quality that brings a timelessness to love is intimacy because I'm experiencing her on a daily basis. We're getting closer. We're enjoying a greater, deeper level of openness and honesty that wasn't even possible because I didn't know myself years before as well as that particular day. And so we're getting closer and closer. And the titillation is still working, even though I know logically my wife is now 31 years older than she was when I met her.
Hmm.
But you know how some old lovers say, oh, but my wife is as beautiful today or more beautiful today.
Hmm.
Now I know what they're talking about because that is genuinely true. I would say for all the young people out there who are wondering about aging and love, it's genuinely true that if you have a relationship where intimacy it's alive, it's functioning, it's a daily part of your life, there is a timelessness to your existence
Hmm.
that is really gratifying.
So then, with all of this, I guess it all comes down to something you like to say as well. What's the rush?
Yeah, and that would be true of me even today if I were suddenly single again. I don't know how long any of us have to live, but if you meet someone who you're really enjoying, why would you want to get that over with to move on to another level when if dating her is really a pleasure, then why not date until you're ready for the next pleasure, not desperate to close the sale so she can't leave you because you've locked it down in holy matrimony or you've moved her in and now it's going to be really hard for him or her to ever leave the relationship. I just think for both of us, Sharon and myself, the idea of really enjoying the romance and the dating long distance was really a joyful pleasure. I would hurry home after work late at night and we would have our date talking on the telephone. And then at the end of when she moved here, we would have the same kind of situation, phone calls, but also dating in person more regularly. And then even to this very day, I just love the company of my wife.
Hmm.
She's really pleasurable for me. And I don't say that because the way men might say, and you know who you are, you liars out there. I love craft fairs. No, you don't.
Hmm.
No guy loves craft fairs. But there are guys who will tell their wives they love craft fairs.
Yeah, because they
And
have to. They're on the hook to
they said it
please.
once. Now it's going to be really hard to admit it
Yeah.
that I've been lying to you for 14 years, honey. I hate those damn craft fairs.
Hmm.
And so I think to get to a point where we can just feel easy and comfortable and safe and passionately in love and sexually attracted, all of that together, it's like, what's not to like?
Well, that's that I'm saying. You've unlocked the secret. That's the blueprint.
I
So
don't think we get to use the phrase "the secret"
then,
anymore.
yeah, that's
After that book came out, it's now hopelessly contaminated.
yeah.
So
But it's like seeing all that and being like, this is what is the potential. I'm not saying like, and
I want everybody to have what I have,
yeah, that's why
and
you
I
share
think
the tip,
everybody
and
can
that's
do it.
yeah,
I
and I feel
do.
like for me, like just telling people too, it's like I've been putting into practice. I have not experienced the 30 plus years of bliss and really like that whole thing, but I've been applying it to my dating life and it's been like revolutionary for me. And it's like I've worked through so much of my own neediness. I've built a stronger life for myself that I am comfortable with. And
You've changed your target demographic.
yeah, I'm just way more intentional with it. I'm more open to be truthful and upfront and have the harder conversations, or I mean, they actually become more fun, to be honest, like once you start doing it.
Yes, more
Um,
interesting, more
yeah,
genuine.
knowing about sexual compatibility, which
Yeah.
I did not even take into consideration.
Mhm.
Yeah, just been a lesson in learning myself and also just not rushing in because I kind of was like you for the most part. I like her, go on a date, hey, let's date. It's like, so,
Yeah, it's startling how unconscious we are
hmm,
in those earlier days. But then you're also having, even though you're having dating relationships and you haven't, tied the knot or no one's moved in or anything,
hmm.
would you agree you're also enjoying dating more?
Oh yeah, it's a blast. And
Yeah.
like you always say too, it's like if it's not fun, why are you dating? Like
Hmm.
that's something that you say, and it's like yeah, there's no one that I'm dating that I'm not having a good time with. I'm not. So
Isn't there
it's
something about this? What is it that we have where you want to share this with everybody? You want everybody to know
it's
how to do
the
this.
freedom. I think like you said in one podcast, it's like Sharon has given you the freedom to walk the earth being yourself in a way, or you have that freedom, and I feel like
But why don't I keep that all to myself? I could be the only happy man on earth. And
just
it just seems anathema to me to think that I would keep all that to myself.
yeah.
I want everybody to experience this. And I think it's because of empathy. I know it's a very unpopular
Mhm.
word in Christian circles right now, but when I see people who are miserable and who don't have to be,
Yeah.
when I see people who are miserable because they're missing just a little bit of information, I find it heartbreaking.
Mm.
I really feel for them. And I just don't think it's right to withhold that information
Yeah.
and to keep it from people when they genuinely want to know how to do that.
Yeah.
But nobody's explaining it.
Well, that's the thing. And I think there's a lot of information out there, like I said in the beginning, but I feel like you put it in a really simple way. And some people have like certain teachers that like teach them the thing, but it's like we're all going to the same place, spiritually or I mean, relationally. I mean, what we would want to, I feel like you want to go to the maximum human
We
potential.
all want to. I just remember one self appointed teacher who was working with couples, and I've told you about this, and her explanation is these are high vibration couples,
Yeah.
which is so hopelessly untethered to any kind of reality I've experienced.
Hmm.
I have no idea what that would possibly mean, how one might measure that,
Yeah. Well,
how one might replicate that. And it just seems more like new age BS than
yeah.
anything else. So I just, I think it has to be simple because our whole species is a social species. We are naturally supposed to be good at this,
Hmm.
but in my lifetime, I've mostly noticed we seem to suck at it.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be some easy solution for something we're doing very wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it's largely we just don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and I like easy, and they always say if you, what is it, Einstein, if you can't explain it simply, you don't fully understand it. Was it?
Yeah, that's not, yeah, I think he did. That's not a phrase that I often reflect on, but I think that that's really true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And even in my own profession, I don't find therapists are explaining things to others. And part of that is back to school. I've noticed there are plenty of I saw some domestic violence out in public one time, and it
Hmm.
turned out the victim, who later thanked me for speaking up to the police and helping to prosecute the case, she was a psychologist,
Hmm.
but she had normalized her low level of relationship success. And there are other therapists out there who are living unfulfilling, unhappy marriages. And so I think you have to have something before you can give it away.
Yeah.
And I just feel really at peace trying to give this away. Uh, the thing you and I chatted about before this recording was I think people have a hard time receiving it for free for the same reason so many people have a hard time receiving love. They just don't believe it exists out there for them. And I want to encourage everybody to have faith, because you are a lovable person. And if you work for it, you can build a life worth living and worth sharing.
And that's the mic drop.
Okay.